This is The Meaningful Way. I'm your host, Luke Iorio. Today's episode is going to range into a whole host of areas. We're going to talk about how success without fulfillment isn't really success, because that happiness that is such a requirement of really truly feeling success, that happiness is really an inside job. And while we talk about all of these things, most of our time today is going to be based on a journey. You see, our guest today was on an extraordinary journey right from a very young age, a picture, a visualization, something he was completely drawn into, and he actually made happen for himself. However, along with it came some really difficult challenges, the trials and tribulations of the dark side of a journey. And then we get to hear about the emergence on the other side and how he did find that happiness within to find the true fulfilling success that he was really truly after, and how he helps people, those who have been through the challenge of addiction and recovery and even relapse, how he helps those individuals today. And so with that today, I am absolutely honored to have as my guest Charlie Mills. At the age of just 13, Charlie had dreams of becoming a world-traveled drummer, making music for a living and performing for hundreds of thousands of fans. And well, guess what? By the age of 32, Charlie was touring the world, performing with his heroes and making music for thousands of people nightly. Additionally, he found it essential to pass his experiences and knowledge on, creating a teaching program that to date has positively impacted the lives of hundreds of young New Jersey drummers. And yet, after dealing with years of addiction and its life-eroding effects, including jail, divorce, the loss of a career, and bankruptcy, he recovered from his illness. He went on to become a drug and alcohol counselor here in New Jersey, and in 2015, he even added being a life coach to his journey through a really cool school that I know is called IPEC. And currently, Charlie does outreach for his facility, he does advocacy, and most recently, he has also given back to the recovery community on a larger level by founding the New Jersey Recovery Advocates. It's a grassroots 501(c)(3) corporation dedicated to reducing the stigma around addiction, centered here at home for him in New Jersey. And with that, Charlie, welcome to The Meaningful Way.
Luke, it's good to see you today. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, man. So let's start here. Let's start with a little bit of the after picture. All right. So tell me a little bit about what's at the heart of the work that you're doing right now, and then we'll move back in time.
So, okay. Well, in substance abuse, it's we all know, we see the eroding effects of the opiate crisis here in New Jersey specifically, as well as around the country. It's always been my personal I've had a personal connection to substance abuse, in my own life. In an effort to be completely transparent here, since my first 12-step meeting was somewhere around the middle of 1984, and through everything that you just read about me there, I ended up following my heart and getting involved at a professional level. I met a girl. The girl didn't want me back on a tour bus or on a plane. She wanted me home. So, okay, honey. And but now what to do? And what connected me? What was I connected to? In other words, as deeply and as passionately as music was. Mm-hmm. And it really comes down to helping somebody. That healer's heart. I remember the great vibe that I got teaching and passing my God-given skills and talent and my insight and my experience, what I had done right, as well as what I had done wrong, along to young guys, and being able to make a living at it. So when thinking several years ago about what to do next, the substance abuse industry kind of came into my sights, and I started going down that road.
Okay. We're going to come back to the thoughts around connection, because it's something you and I were going on a little bit about before we started rolling into the recording, and I want to come back to that. But let's jump back in time. So how is it that a 13-year-old gets so hooked into music and drumming and says, this is what I'm going to do, and then actually does it? How does that occur?
I can blame my Aunt Sheila. My Aunt Sheila is about 10 years older than me, and she joined the military, and she had to leave a record collection somewhere, and it wasn't going to be in a duffel bag in Germany. So she dumped it on me, and there were 4 records in that collection, and one of them was Led Zeppelin 4. This is the early 70s, and it was still in the wrapper from the Columbia Record Club, I think, and it changed my life. There was a Beatles record in there and a Sly Stone record in there, but and I found out that I had a little bit of aptitude to play drums. So now I'm banging on everything in the world. I get a drum kit when I'm about 13 years old, and I'm taking music in school. But the defining moment was most likely, like we were talking about, that moment where the vision crystallized for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but I went to see a Rush concert at the Palladium in New York City on 14th Street, and I remember sitting front row center and 3,500 screaming kids in back of me, mostly guys, and a lot of them drummers too. And the band kicks up, and I'm sitting there. I'm at church or school or whatever you want to say, and I'm sitting mesmerized watching my hero Neil Peart at the time, the drummer for Rush, and Geddy and Alex, the bass player and the guitar player, come to the end of the stage, and they're looking down at me like, kid, the other 3,499 of you are standing up here. Why don't you get up? And I kind of looked around their legs like, hey, get out of the way. I can't see what Neil's doing. And they laughed and they walked away. But it occurred to me, I was kind of embarrassed. I stood up and I put my back to the stage and I looked out over the audience. And I remember seeing all these kids just mesmerized and so in the moment of what was going on the stage. And I closed my eyes and I envisioned what it was going to be like when I got to sit where Neil was sitting. There was no question that it was going to happen. I didn't know how it was going to get there. I didn't know anything about the business of music. All I knew was this guy was doing something that I knew inside my soul I had to do. So thus was born my mission in life. It chose me. I say it all the time, man. I didn't choose music, Luke. Music chose me.
When you get a vision like that, because this is something I've heard come up from a variety of individuals who've kind of connected to this big picture for themselves. But when you turn around, you close your eyes and you're picturing what it would be like to be able to see that audience, view that audience from up on stage and behind that drum kit. What did you feel when you connected to that vision?
Wow. What did I feel in that moment? Exhilarated, success, powerful, connected to something, being able to move 3,500 complete strangers, just by the power of what you had created with these other 2 guys that were on the stage with you. Now, obviously, at this age, I know there was a lot more to it than that. But in that moment, in that naivete of 13 years old with my back up against the stage, I can tell you that it was intoxicating.
Sure.
Again, look at the result. My entire life was wrapped around achieving that goal for the next 25 years.
Yeah, well, there's beauty in that innocence.
Ignorance.
To not know otherwise.
No, please, if I could only go back to that, huh?
And I think it's one of the things I want to hear a bit about. Obviously, then what unfolds, how does it occur? But what I've found is that when people recognize the feeling, the connection that is even deeper than just what you see and can picture in your mind, that's part of what's pulling you forward. So talk about what happens next, because to do what you do next, to commit yourself the way you commit yourself, you've got to feel like you're getting pulled forward by something.
Yeah, I think the vision, the never losing sight of the vision was really the carrot in front of this particular donkey. How many nights did I sit with the headphones on in the dark in the living room, laying on the floor, my head on a pillow, just envisioning playing air drums to all my favorite records, and just always picturing that. How many sports teams did I walk away from? How much when I started growing my hair and pierced my ear and listened to music loud and started staying out late. The rancor I endured from my father, who was not of that school. What's going on with my son kind of thing. And until I started coming home with a couple of bucks in my pocket from playing with guys that were a little older than me, then all of a sudden, the the tone died down with Dad because he saw that, wow, he's doing something with some older guys. Maybe there's something to this. So he didn't give me too hard of a time when my grades started slipping a little lot of bit. Yeah. So, but yeah, it was that vision that kept pulling me forward, and the passion. Also, you have to remember that, in growing up in the 70s, Luke, I didn't grow up in a time where everybody got a trophy. Yeah. You bumped into things. You bumped through Little League and realized, I'm good and I like it, but that's not really me. And I played football in school, and I liked it, and I enjoyed the challenge, but it wasn't really me. But drumsticks in my hand, now that was something. And that was, again, the end result was, this is my life. This is what I want to do, and that's what kept pulling me forward, never losing sight of that.
It's interesting. And pun intended or not, it's just that when you find those things that are natural to you, it's like a rhythm that you can connect to. Yeah. And whether that be truly rhythm in this instance, or it is the rhythm of that sport or the rhythm of that art or the rhythm of that work, it's something where you truly begin to recognize the effortlessness of what begins to come through you at that moment. And it sounds like that's what was striking you.
Agreed. Again, and at that age as well, where the cement was poured and it started to cure, that's the time in life where we're really defining who we are and what we are. Yeah. At least for me, that's my experience looking back. And I was Charlie Mills, the drummer. Everyone knew, my mother in the back, how's your son doing? Where's he playing this weekend? My mother's like, who are you? How do you know? Oh, yeah, my son or my daughter knows your son, Right. But everyone knew who I was. And so it became such a huge chunk of me. It wasn't disingenuous. It was really, from a transparent level, I was Charlie Mills, the drummer, man. That's all I did. No matter what I was doing to make money, I was Charlie Mills, the drummer. Yeah. That's what I saw in the mirror every morning. Yeah. So,
take us through a little bit of the early career, meaning how things unfolded for you. What were some of the trials and tribulations that you needed to go through, the highs and lows that you were experiencing before you arrive in, say, 90, I think it was 84, you said, when things really started to turn?
Yeah, things started to turn. There was a thriving cover circuit at the time, and, playing in bar bands 7 nights a week here in New Jersey in the tri-state area. Yeah. You could go out and see music, and there weren't too many guys that were playing in those types of bands, those cover bands, that really saw what the big picture was and how limiting that was. Yeah, you can make a great living, and the girls were great, and the clubs, and you got a lot of adulation, and you were basically a little rock star in your own little kingdom of the tri-state area here. But there was not much of an end game there, and that was proven true when the drinking age changed in the early 80s here in Jersey and New York, and everything fell apart. For me, it was always a struggle to find creative satisfaction, work with people that I respected, that I didn't mind dedicating 3, 4, 5 nights a week after doing my menial day job, because we all have menial day jobs then, right? It was always, again, the drive to just get to the next thing, the next rung. I would be less than honest if I didn't say that the substance abuse end of my life played a huge part in mitigating any kind of forward motion, man. Yeah. Man takes a drink, drink takes a drink, drink takes a man, and that was my story. So by the time I was 23 years old, every night was Saturday night. I was going out and making music with anyone that would call, but it was just as much about the party and the lifestyle than it was the music, and after a while it tipped over into the party, became more important than the music. Yeah. And that's a bad place. And I didn't recognize it at the time. So, sure. Cut to 86, I'm drinking like a heathen and doing anything else that anybody puts in front of me. And this horrific, I was playing in a pretty what turned into a pretty big Jersey band here, and founding member, and we got some money from a record company, and what do? You go out and celebrate, and next thing I know, I woke up a day later in a white paper jumpsuit that I definitely didn't leave the house in a city jail here in Central Jersey, with blood under my fingernails and an attempted murder charge in my back pocket. Yeah. And that effectively was a break point. The gentleman that I hurt was a friend of mine, and he ended up living and surviving well. And the band that I was playing with ended up getting a major record deal and going on the road. And I ended up, putting my career on hold while I dealt with my legal issues. I had to do some time in jail, and but I got sober out of the whole process, and that was the gift there. It was a wake-up call. It came at the expense of, my family hearing our name on the radio here in Central Jersey for a couple of days, and a guy almost losing his life because of my inability to use drugs and alcohol without hurting people, and it cost me my career at the time. Yeah, but I got sober.
What do you think you were finding in the period that follows that? So that next, while the career is on hiatus, as it were, what were the parts of yourself that you were now finding? What was it you were starting to reconnect to that allowed you to face recovery and face everything that you were going through?
Yeah, wow, that's a different question. Thanks, Luke. What was I connecting to? I think I was connecting to a sense of normalcy, or what I perceived normalcy to be. I did my little bit of time in the loving embrace of the Middlesex County Adult Correctional Facility and the fine people working in that establishment. And I got out and I moved in with my girlfriend and started living a life. I started supporting her to a degree, and her, maybe not financially, we were good partners together, but at the time it was really about connecting to a sense of normal, of a sober life. Hard to do when you're in your mid-20s and you still have musical aspirations and everyone around you drinks or does drugs. Not that I wanted to drink or do drugs anymore. I was scared to death of what might happen if I indulged in that. But trying to find the people that were as serious as the last bunch of guys was difficult, because now everyone thought that they could rehearse 3 nights a week and get a record deal. And while it was true for some, it definitely wasn't true for me. That business model wasn't working. So
how did it really turn? Because you did start to finally find those people who gave you some pretty interesting perspective of what it took for...
So I, in my quest to be normal, I guess, I was working in the printing trades, and I was playing around at night and in little cover bands here in Jersey, nothing serious. And I ended up getting married and moving to North Brunswick. And I got a phone call from a referral, and I got a cassette tape in the mail a few days later, and the music was great. The musicians were obviously competent. The musical style was what appealed to me at the time, and I was jazzed. But there's two sides to the phrase music business, Everyone can play. By that time, there were tons of great musicians. It was the business end of things that seemed to trip everyone up. And who had the magic formula, I didn't know. But I went down to Toms River and I met these guys. And one guy in particular, the leader, I guess, the de facto leader, was this guy, Tony Palmucci. And his cohort, another friend, long-term friend of mine now, Vic Pepe. And the two of those guys, as producer and main songwriter in this conglomerate, in the conversation that ensued with these two gentlemen, things were obviously going through their minds that weren't of the norm, at least in my limited view. And Tony had said the one key thing was like, listen, man, we can't expect full-time results from a part-time endeavor. You need to quit your job and you need to move into the band house here with your wife. And I was able to sell my wife on the quitting my full-time job thing, but we stayed in North Brunswick, and I started 5 days a week, rehearsing every single day and creating original music with these guys. And it was exciting, and my skill level went up because now I've got sticks in my hand. I'm finally chasing my dream. I'm back on track to achieving that goal that I had when I was 13 years old, Luke, with my back against the stage thinking I was Neil. And here we are. Some of the things that Tony always said, conceive, believe, and achieve. They turned me on. And I wondered, where are you guys getting this information? How is this coming about? Because, man, where is this all coming from? You don't talk like normal guys in rock bands, And they had both said, listen, we did this cassette package from this guy, Anthony Robbins. I said, the guy with the grand piano looking mouth that's on at 3 a.m, on Guthrie, selling his tapes through this Guthrie Ranker marketing company. And they were like, yeah, that's the one. And here, borrow them and take them. I said, I'll go buy my own. And I bought Personal Power on CD. and I went through the program, and I started hearing those threads that really motivated me in the way that Tony and Vic talked. And that was my first exposure to any kind of coaching whatsoever. Yeah. But I'll tell you, the missing point in that whole process, the information was great. The missing point was the accountability to a coach.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
I can understand and I can get my head around everything, and I personalized things, and I cried, and when I had to cry, and I wrote lists and copious amounts of lists, and I came out of the gate strong. But without that accountability piece to a coach, that was the missing thing.
What was it that ultimately got you off the road?
There was a lot that went on in between that particular period and now, but a lot went on. A relapse happened, a substance relapse happened in '96, and didn't subside. I didn't put the proverbial plug in the jug again until Halloween in 2004.
Okay,
and it's been, thank God, that it's been consistent ever since. This time around, I even in my addiction, I had the momentum of building it back up with Tony and Vic in the mid '90s. That whole thing, that once you start momentum, it's hard to stop a freight train on a dime. In anything in life. Once you get momentum, that's why I tell my clients, momentum is key. When you get momentum, don't stop. Just keep doing it no matter what you do. And if you fall off for a day or two, get back up on the horse and go. Whether it's the gym or it's your diet or it's working through a program, no matter what you're doing, just keep the momentum going. The momentum in my life, no matter how I tried to sabotage it, didn't stop until I pulled the plug right around 2000. I was a hopeless addict, and I walked off of one of the biggest tours of the year, and I sunk further into addiction. I got sober again in 2004 after a really horrific period, and then
What actually? Let me pause you there.
Yeah,
what
sure.
was it that lifted you out then in 2004?
2004. By that point, I can tell you that I had walked away from the music business. I had tried doing things to make money. Selling art in the city, which was a passion of mine, and selling BMWs and going back out on the road. I road managed a pretty big tour in 2002. No one got arrested, and I was doing more drugs than everyone else in the whole organization. I got people through 12 countries over the course of 3 months without a single bust or arrest, and I would have been the one going to jail. And even that lost its luster. No one wanted me around in a business where that behavior is tolerated and totally accepted. Even then, the phone stopped ringing, Luke. So it was bad. I ended up with 3 plastic bags worth of clothing. And I couldn't pay the storage locker fees to get my drums out of hock. I couldn't make a living with sticks in my hands on my own kit if I wanted to at that point. It was truly rock bottom. And the girl whose couch I was living on changed the locks on Halloween in 2004. And then my mother, I went crying the blues to my mom, total level 1. And, my mom summoned up the courage to finally say, listen, you can't stay here. If these are the life choices you're making, that's fine, but you're accountable. And in that instance, I was homeless. In that moment, I was homeless. And thank God my powers of persuasion are mighty when backed up against the wall, because I dope fiended my way, as we say, back onto this woman's couch. 3 days later, I walked back into a meeting, a 12-step meeting, and I haven't stopped going since. So that was the linchpin.
So tell me about the road up, meaning when you get to that point, you get yourself back to a meeting. What was the journey? Because you're in this incredible place now. You're helping people in all of these extraordinary ways. But there's many individuals who hit that bottom and they don't know where they're going to turn. They don't know what that road is going to look like, how to even take the next step. What did it look like for you?
Wow, it's I could well up thinking about that period and how emotionally all over the place I was. I was truly, without being medicated, without having that thing to just blot out the reality of my existence at that age and all the things that I had blown, it was a hard time. What did I stay connected to? I think knowing that I had achieved at one point 10 years of abstinence. I wouldn't call it sobriety because there wasn't really a sober life, but it was an abstinent life, and a lot happened in that life. So I think that was a little bit of a carrot, maybe a little mini carrot that you put on your salad, not the full bore carrot, but. And once again, there's milestones in 12-step programs where they count time and the time starts rolling on, and that felt good. And I reconnected with my creativity and my musical life. I started teaching full time, and that quickly jumped up to 5 days a week. And I got asked to, I went on the road at the time. I was about a year sober, and I got asked to go on the road with Billy Idol and not playing. Taking care of his keyboard player at the time. Long, convoluted story that we won't get into. But I wanted to see, could I go back out on the road and stay sober? And not just stay sober, Luke, but be happy.
Enjoy it.
Like, could I enjoy that life? And the answer was yes. I went out and I made more money in those 3 months than I had made in a long time. It felt good to be a part of a team. That's a core thing for me. Yeah. It felt good to be respected in my personal area there. It was a new skill for me, taking care of a keyboard player, a pretty demanding guy, but I was able to rise to the occasion. And I got home safely, a lot of overseas phone calls on my cell phone.
Sure.
But I stayed connected to the people, and that's something that we were talking about early on too. The carrot was the connections. Yeah. I had a life to connect back to. I had a dream to connect back to. I had momentum and a skill set with that I could go back to. So teaching for me became a real cornerstone of who I was. And that really awakened that healer's heart, that desire to serve that we talk about. Yeah. That's so important with the most successful people in the world. They give back. Maybe you don't hear about it all the time, but there's always an altruistic streak in everyone. I'm so fortunate and blessed. What can I do for others? Yeah. In 12-step meetings, I can remember finding the new guy and just ask him to come out for pizza. Don't worry, how many slices of pizza did I buy for new guys? When I started a little contracting business, basically a glorified handyman business to keep the lights on, while I'm playing. I can remember putting new guys to work with a roller in their hand. Their hands are shaking and it looks like a Picasso on the wall. But, you can fill in the blank spaces and you walk away and you've given a guy an opportunity to earn a living. You get some self-respect back. I get the job done. I feel good about helping somebody else out, and so ends the next day and the next day and the next day. Yeah. So reconnecting just to life in general, to that creativity and finding that healer's heart waking up in me, first through teaching and then, meeting a girl. You had said that earlier. It's all about a girl. It's always about a girl. And I get a phone call. I'm contracting and I'm playing locally and enjoying my life. I'm living 100 yards off of the beach in Belmar in a little back house, and I'm happy as a clam. Yeah. And it's always a girl. And I get a phone call from this woman, Diane, to do some contracting on her house. And it turns out she was a musician in the 80s, and we had millions of the same friends, and we'd never run into each other. And the minute I went up to her house to check out the job, sparks were flying. And, but she was in a relationship and I was in a relationship. And I said, I can't, I'm an honest, integral guy. I can't step over the line here. And it was good to know that, a really successful type A kind of person saw me for what I was, or maybe saw the diamond in the rough that she says that she polished up. I'll have to let you talk to her about that. But I made the decision then in that time frame to end that less than fulfilling relationship. Yeah. Not to jump into a relationship with Diane, who, we're on track to be married in the next month or so.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's great. But to go deep, to have something that's more fulfilling, success without fulfillment isn't really success at all.
So that's actually where I wanted you to go a little bit further on, because the part of the question, we started talking about this before we were doing the interview, and I wanted to get more in, and while we're here, is to talk about how connection is related to what is almost at the heart of the addiction and heart of the recovery at the same time.
Great question. And we were talking about that. I'd love to say I was an expert on that, but I have two things that I'll tell you. The first is my personal experience. Yeah. If I'm to compare myself as a man getting sober in his early 40s and having had a track record of success in certain things, I had a life to go back to.
Yeah.
If I'm to compare the life of a guy trying to get sober in his mid-40s to that of a young man or young woman in their early 20s who has never connected to anything, who has actually burned all those connections based on their addiction, it's a lot more difficult. And that's where my theory that coaching, taking a holistic look at someone's life, if we were to add a spoke on the wheel of life, right, and we were to say addiction. How are you feeling about your addiction, dealing with your addiction in the first 90 days? And you're going to meeting and you're doing all those things that you're connecting to your therapist and you're dealing with your issues and you're connected to your recovery community. Yeah, man, I'm at an 8. Well, what about all the other spokes? And that's where the conversation gets missed. And that's where the connections end, because that's the meat and potatoes, I believe, Luke, of getting people connected. Yeah. The second thing is, if anyone here is listening and is interested, there's a TED Talk by a gentleman. His name is Johann Hari, Hari, and it's called "Everything You Thought You Knew About Addiction Is Wrong." I've got thousands of hours in the chair as a therapist in the substance abuse space. I've got more than that, 3 times more than that, sponsoring guys in 12-step. And I can tell you that changed the way I look at everything. At its core, I believe that we're all looking to connect to something, a community, another person, our families. And when we can't do that, when we think that those connections or reconnecting is impossible, that's when the hopelessness sets in, How can I connect to a job that's meaningful when I don't know what's meaningful, when I don't know who I am? It's an inside job. We were talking about that earlier. So that's probably the biggest challenge that I see. The biggest shift that has to happen in the substance abuse world, from my limited personal experience, right, is that we need to start that conversation. Yeah. We need to have that conversation of from a holistic point of view early on. I'm going to say 45, 90, 6 months, somewhere in that timeline of abstinence, we have to have the conversation. Okay, who are you now? Yeah. What do you see in the mirror? Let's take that inside journey. Let's go deep. Forget about the substance abuse thing. You've got that. You're doing that, man. But when you raise your hand in a meeting and say, I'm an addict or I'm an alcoholic, you're framing yourself into something that has nothing but scorched earth implications in your mind. Okay, that's a part of you. Yeah. And I'm not trying to reinvent the 12-step wheel. That saved my life. It's 78 years last week. 78 years last week, 12 steps started.
But I think there's several really important things I just want to draw out of that, because one, I think to bring awareness for each of us as to how it is that we label and identify ourselves, what we identify ourselves with, is something to be really careful, because we can associate or attach ourselves to something that is either the part of our lives we no longer want to identify with, we want to move past, but if we keep using that label, we're never really breaking that attachment to what's going on. Agreed. There is so much more that's there. I think the other thing, which we were chatting about a bit before, is addiction is showing up in a lot of ways now. So there's the substance element of it, which we've talked about. There's relationship and sex side of it. There's everything, even to social media or anything that we feel we crave because we can't be where we are, because we feel like we are in some way just can't sit here, or we're not connected, or we're isolated, or whatever it happens to be. We're trying to fill something that we feel is empty within us. And there's so many ways of doing that now. And I think what you're getting into is that as we begin to build awareness of, okay, this is how we need to acknowledge what we need to move past. We need to acknowledge what it is that we're recovering from. We need to face that head on. And at the same time, how do we connect to the rest of what we are? And you describe that as beyond recovery.
Yeah, there's and here's a little IPEC plug. If early on, we were talking about this earlier, that in training, I think it was mod 1 or 2, when we're talking about starting to get our head around the niche. Yeah. And I get that. I have to play to my strengths. I want to stay inside my wheelhouse. What do I know? Let's go with what I know. And I know addiction, and I know performance. So I come up with this little concept of beyond recovery, coaching beyond recovery, because I believe in what I had just talked about. I believe wholeheartedly in that. I believe that coaching can be insanely useful in saving lives, not just enriching lives, man, saving lives, pulling people out of a relapse, if they're able to frame themselves and connect with who they are, and then from there, what they want to do and where they want to go, and who they want to connect to and in what way. I completely lost my train of thought there. But now, if we're talking about beyond, you know, I have to realize that I'm not just going to end up coaching guys that are in recovery or in early recovery or in that recovery space. What's beyond that's universal for all of us. What's beyond the horizon? What's beyond my self-imposed limitations? All those things we talk about. What are my limiting beliefs? What, you know, where are those gremlins coming from, man? How are they popping up? How are they showing up in my everyday life and limiting me to going beyond? You know, let's talk about that. So it was the next logical, I guess, progression from that first little niche of let's coach beyond recovery. Let's get you out of that. Let's get you thinking differently, you know. But what about your parents? You know, maybe your parents want to experience this inner journey. You know, let's sit down for a couple of hours. Give me mom and dad for a couple of hours, one at a time, and we'll talk to them. And now all of a sudden there's a whole other business.
So before we begin to wrap things up, one of the things you mentioned before was this inside job, and I know it's something that was said to you. It's almost a mantra at this point that happiness is an inside job.
Yeah.
What's that mean to you?
Happiness, man. Happiness is an inside job. You know, Bill Leary, God bless him, one of the first guys to sponsor me in 12-step recovery. He dropped that on me when I had him on the mountain as the guru. You know, he would drop those lines, and, you know, the ox is slow, but the earth is patient. I'm still waiting for him to explain that one to me, or what that means to him. But happiness to me, you know, it's not. Happiness is an inside job. How am I feeling today? Did I try to pack something into the stream of life today? Did I bring more to the table than I found necessary to take off? Am I being a phenomenal partner even when Diane's not next to me? How am I showing up? Do I have integrity? Am I always looking for opportunities? Am I continuing to remain curious and open, you know, and inquisitive to everything that's going on around me? You know, what opportunities are here? How can I serve? You know, on a good day, that's how I show up, man. And that's when I say that, I live a pretty happy life. It doesn't make me immune to any of the stressors that come up in everyday life, you know, the money and, you know, finance and romance. Women and money don't come with instructions. And damn, I've screwed both of those up, God knows. But, you know, I like to think that today when I stay close to what I know, which is that it's a journey, nothing's forever, you know, bring God into everything, something bigger than me. Try to stay connected to people and the things that I hold true and dear to me. You know, we said it earlier, and I'll keep saying it. Happiness without fulfillment, success without fulfillment is empty. I don't buy into it, you know. I want to be fulfilled. I want to go sliding into the grave saying, man, what a ride, bloody and scarred and giggling. You know, I don't want to live a life of what ifs. You know.
So let me use that to bring us to the final two questions I wanted to get to. How do you want to be remembered?
You know, I spent time with Charlie Mills, and no matter what you say after that, if you're smiling and it was a good experience, then that was good.
Cool. So at this point, your life and work, what is it that makes life and work meaningful to you?
What is it that makes life and work meaningful to me? The ability to wake up every morning, Luke, and have a shot. You know, I wake up every morning. I draw a sober breath. I see my dogs around the bed. I see Diane next to me, and I realize that I've got a shot at making a difference in the world today. You know, I've got a shot at changing people's lives, helping them come back from perhaps an addiction I knew all too well, or moving forward, you know, even people that are functioning at a high level. I got a shot at helping somebody find some clarity and really break through that wall of cellophane that they just can't seem to push through, you know, and reach what it is, go beyond what it is that they think that they're capable of doing. What an exciting ride, you know? That's the stuff that floats my boat, man. You know, if you want to make a move, give me a call. Let's go. You know, what a great thing, man. That inside ride, being privileged enough to be invited into the inside journey, whether you're in early recovery or, you know, you're a musician looking for clarity, or you're just an ordinary Joe that is thinking that they're missing the boat on something. Let's have a conversation. You know, let's go deep. Let's see what we can do.
Charlie, thanks for being here on The Meaningful Way, man.
My pleasure, Luke. Thanks for asking me.
For everybody out there, the couple things I just want to leave you with, just that constant reminder that success without fulfillment is just empty. It's being able to connect to what it is that matters most, what it is that holds that meaning for you. It's that ability to recognize how is it you're going to go beyond whatever the limitations are that you've placed on yourself, to be able to look at those and say, wait, what might be on the other side of that? And I think what often helps us get there and reach beyond is to take a look and how is it that we're going to help the next person in line. Because when we help bigger than ourselves, when we look outside of ourselves, it connects us to something that's just simply bigger. So with that, until our next time together, as always, I encourage you to enjoy the journey. Thanks for tuning in to The Meaningful Way. If you enjoyed this episode, do me a favor and please subscribe and follow along with all these great guests, their stories and interviews. Also, it helps us a lot if you not only share some of your favorite episodes online, but also provide us feedback. Go into iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite podcast app happens to be, and rate the show. Provide us some feedback and let us know how it is that we're doing. If you want to learn more about what we're up to, whether it be with the iPet Coach Training School, the Live, Lead, Play Network, or even just what's evolving with The Meaningful Way, go on and head on over to lukeiorio.com.